Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Oh, welcome back to another episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. It's kind of a surprise, right, folks? We talked about taking a hiatus from the show, and then I had a couple of friends that reached out and said, hey, we'd be more than happy to join the show to help fill in for Hanna while he moved. Quick update on that. Hanna has accepted the job in Cleveland. He has been working, I think, 19-hour days right now between fixing his house up and fixing his shop up to get it ready for sale 7 days a week. So essentially, I believe he said he's sleeping between 1 and 6 every night, and that's it. So it's a little chaotic for him. He did say if he has an opportunity in a couple of weeks, he will join into the show. But for now, we decided to bring on a couple of guest hosts to talk through stuff. That way, A, I don't get to lose my edge. B, we get to continue to have fun and have conversations about how dumb some of the GOP have been lately. And we'll get to that in just a second. And we could to also talk about the Democratic debates, because we've had the first one that happened about a week and a half ago. And we have more coming up that are actually going to be hosted right in Michigan. And depending on how schedules go that week, there is a possibility that one of the people that are joining as a co-host for the show will actually be going with me, who has portable audio, and we will hopefully be able to get some of that. Again, it all kind of depend on schedules and his schedule and my schedule, but we're hoping to at least get down there for one day to try and get in to see it. But without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on the co-host for tonight, Mr. Boyce from Mindful Skeptics Podcast. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing great. How's it going, brother?
Good. Hey, and I didn't butcher the name of your show like I did 2 months ago. I think 2 months ago I called it the Mindless Skeptics Podcast.
Yes. You're 1 for 3.
There you go. See? So tell everybody, before we get the show going, because we have a very interesting topic we want to talk about. But before we get the show going, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and about your podcast and where they can find.
Well, I'm the host of the Mindful Skeptics Podcast, like you said, and primarily I talk about politics and religion because I'm skeptical of both the government and the organized religion. And I'm an open atheist. I'm an activist in that regard. And I just can't wait to see this, I don't just call it political environment change. And so I think these discussions will help a lot, I hope.
Yeah, I hope so too. And Boyce is Boyce. We've met in person, I don't know, a couple of times. We've been on Boyce's show. He's been on our show before. Actually, one of our more popular episodes was when we discussed the difference between Bernie and Yang. I don't know, that's got to been like 2 months, 3 months ago, something like that. And we get to kind of rehash that a little bit because Boyce is a huge Andrew Yang fan, and I'm not quite as sold on his techniques, and he's a little more libertarian and business focused than I am, I guess. But I think he offers some good representation. But if you have not checked out Boyce's podcast and YouTube channel, he has a YouTube channel and a podcast, and you just posted, you had over 100 videos, I think, that you've done the last year.
Yeah, I started my YouTube channel about 7 months ago, and I started a podcast about 9 months ago, maybe. And so, yeah, I've managed to make 100 videos so far.
That's crazy. That's a lot of videos, man.
Well, I make a lot of shorter ones that are from my Instagram TV channel. It's called Stupid Trump Tweets. So I just make fun of Trump's ignorance on Twitter. And so that's just low-hanging fruit, honestly, but it's still fun.
Yeah, I think it's fun. I agree. I enjoy your short rants about Trump's disgusting sayings. And it's random too, man. Like, he is not he doesn't have the ability to be consistent in anything that he does at all.
No, he's very incoherent in his directions.
Exactly. I think we could drink a bottle of whiskey each and still be more coherent than Trump.
Oh, that's pushing my boundaries right there, but I'll give it a shot.
All right, maybe one night we'll call it a shot of whiskey night or something like that. We'll do a shot of whiskey every 10 minutes and see how long it takes before we sound like Trump.
Or do like a challenge where we listen to one of his speeches and see how many times he says illegal immigrants or something.
No. And it's funny. There was a meme I saw the other day where people are all passed out, and somebody posted about, how at the Democratic debates, everybody, every time somebody said something was free, you did a shot. And there's all these passed out millennials, right? And I just kind of looked at that and I was like, okay, I think that's funny. I get it. But if you did the same thing for Trump, I think we wouldn't be passed out. I think we'd just all be dead. There would be like hospital beds lined up with all of us with IVs in them.
Yeah, we'll all have diapers on. We can't make it to the bathroom.
That's crazy. It's crazy. So, again, everybody, we're sorry Hanna couldn't join, but like I said, my wonderful new co-host for the next couple of months is going to be joining us on and off at least every other week. If not, like I said, if not every week, depending on his schedule, what his schedule permits. But tonight, the one thing that I wanted to do, and this is weird me saying tonight because Boyce and I are actually recording in the middle of the day. So there's a little bit more sobriety, I think, that will be into this episode. I don't know if that's good or bad or not. I do have a bottle of Jameson sitting next to me, but, in fairness, it was kind of one of those things where the middle of the day worked out better. I haven't done a podcast in the middle of the day in like 2 years. And the only time I ever did that was because some of the guests we used to have on were over in Europe. And that was like the only time, for them, unless they had to get up at 4 a.m. And we never wanted to make guests do that. So this is definitely different. Hanna never recorded before 10 o'clock at night ever in his life. So this is kind of cool. So tonight, the first topic we wanted to look at, obviously, was Trump's military parade. And I don't know how much time this is going to take. This could be 5 minutes or this could be an hour. But I thought it was interesting because I'll be honest with you, I refused to watch it live. Not that I would have been around to watch it live anyway, but I refused to watch it live. And, going back to it, I couldn't even get through more than 10 or 15 minutes of his speech. I just couldn't do it. But I did go through and I started to watch some of the images from the actual parade. Because, a lot of people were very concerned, and I'm not going to say I wasn't concerned as well, because there was an article way back, I think it was last year, when this all came up, and everybody was talking about military parades and Trump spending all this money, and, Hanna and I actually looked into it to say, hey, do other nations do military parades? Is this a unique thing? Do we only hate it because of the fact that it's Trump, right? Do we only honestly hate things because of Trump? And I will say that there always is a little bit of bias, I think, on both our sides, that we both do not like Trump. So there is a harder line here, I think, with that. But what's interesting, though, is if you actually watch a lot of the parade footage, the stuff that was going down the streets of Washington, where was the military tanks and guns? They only did that in front of, in D.C., in front of Trump. Other than that, the majority of it was like literally a normal 4th of July parade. Yeah. Seriously. It's weird.
Well, and oddly enough, you mentioned that episode. That's the first episode I was on.
Oh, was it? Last year?
Yep. Yeah,
wow.
because I'm a veteran, and you guys had me on because how does it look for a veteran to see a military parade? And we kind of joked about it a little bit, how no one's ever asked for a parade in their honor, quote unquote.
Yes.
I think that's number 140 for you guys or something like that, as I remember a while. That's the first time I drove up in the middle of the night to Grand Rapids to meet you guys at his shop. It is late by the time I got home that night.
Yeah, that was a late night. That was a late night for all of us, I think. Yeah, I'm going to look that episode up.
Conversation.
Yeah, that's crazy, too, because, you got to think, yeah, that was episode 140. You're right. Death of a military parade.
That's it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's just oddly enough, that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah, and no offense to you, I what I wanted to do is I wanted to have this conversation, right? For the pure fact that if we didn't talk about this, at all, we just can't just ignore it, because just not talking about it is not going to make it go away. It's not going to change what has happened. It's not going to affect. I don't think it's as big of a deal, honestly. I do disagree with the large waste of money. I will put my libertarian and Republican hat on for this and say this is a large waste of money, especially because the majority of the money went into protecting the president and bringing some high-end military, vehicles and personnel onto the Strip. The normal part of the parade, I don't believe, costs that much. And again, I don't have a document showing me exact costs, but watching all these people, wave flags and toot baritones and tubas and throw their pom-poms in the air and stuff like that. That's normal parade stuff. Around here in Zealand, to put a parade on costs roughly $400 or $500. So that one may have cost $10,000 tops for that. But it's the other side of it. It's the protecting the president. It's, you're opening him up. And that was the thing. Did you watch any of the videos? There, literally, he's got glass in front of him and the whole crowd. Yeah, that's crazy. Like, I guess I have not watched other military parades, so I don't know if that happens. But to me, that just says, are you that worried about being shot? Like, we don't do this. When you stand up and address people, you don't have bulletproof glass in front of you. That's just weird to me.
Well, that's him kind of, I think, is projecting fear of the Antifa or the radical left, as he wants to call it, and try to demonize a little bit and saying, I don't feel safe, even the Secret Service. I'll put bulletproof glass up just in case, like he's the Pope or something. Yeah, it's just crazy to me. I get that we need to be safe, and I get that in today's society there's a lot of things that have been happening that you cringe at. But come on, seriously? Are we that worried about, somebody I'll be honest, I have no interest in seeing him assassinated. I hate Trump. I don't want him to be assassinated. I'd rather him die of like a heart attack, right? A proper death for him. Yes. Yeah. A heart attack or, a stroke or something. Or maybe he trips down the stairs at the White House and I don't know, goes into a coma or something. Yeah. I don't know. Just him dying by assassination is just like the most awful thought to me. And I hate him. Yeah, it makes him a martyr then. Yeah. That will only rally the troops around him like, it's a true martyr, and it's not good for our country to see more assassinations. We already had enough attempts and successful ones. Yeah. And if you think about it, we could talk about this on a later podcast. I don't want to spend too much time on Antifa, but I'm very pro being reactionary with violence if it's needed. Anybody that listens to the show knows that I'm pretty far into that camp, as an individual. But I think an assassination is way over the top for that. Antifa doesn't go around assassinating people. That's a planned, coordinated malice, effort. The difference is you have a bunch of people and you have a reporter that is constantly berating you, is a horrible person, continues to portray people in light. You might punch him, or a Nazi walks in there. And I won't disagree that maybe Trump might be borderline Nazi-ish. I have to be careful because every time I say that, I have 100 million people come after me. It's like, Trump's not a Nazi, stop saying that. Like, okay, fine, but he kind of reeks of it, Well, and what I always tell people when they say, do you think Trump's a racist? I was like, it doesn't matter if he's racist or not. All the racist thinks he is. That's all that matters. Yeah. And he doesn't do anything to dispel it, right? No, well, he attacks the couple of minority reporters at these press conferences and says, instead of saying that's not a good question, he'll just say that's a stupid question, or you're ignorant, or you're showing low IQ if you're a minority or a woman. He approaches it with a different technique to project his hatred or dislike of people with gestures like that. He's not doing the Heil the Hitler thing, but he's definitely parroting what they want to hear. Yeah, he's saying there's good people on both sides. And when you said the
the thing where he's kind of diverting and not owning or denying it. It reminds me of the South Park episode, the first one they had on with where they made fun of Michael Jackson, right? And he keeps going, you're ignorant. You're just ignorant, guys. And because everybody is like, well, you kind of like children a little too much. You're just ignorant. But that's if you could get rid of the voice and the image of Michael Jackson and just go look at Trump that way. That's that imagery from way back then. That's how he acts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, let's go back to the parade.
Yes.
So again, tell everybody you're as a veteran. I mean, you didn't watch the parade, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does it bother you, minus the waste of money, does it bother you that we had to show our military strength?
Well, first of all, there is no show of military strength by parading them down streets and destroying the infrastructure. To me, that just is not good for the roads. It's not good for the ground you park a tank on. It's silliness. This is not the Red Square of Mother Russia. And that's all it is. He's trying to mimic dictatorship. This big show of power. It's I don't know. It's just so infantile to say. He's like a bully. See how big I am? I have like that whole Kim Jong-un thing. I have a bigger button on my desk. Give me a break, pal. But yeah, so as a veteran, there's no need in all that. This parading, you lead by actions, not by demonstrations. And again, $96 million, I believe the estimate was. So that's a lot of people that are homeless veterans that could be taken care of with $96 million and actually build shelters for people.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. I mean, I think we waste a lot of money. I think, last week the last episode we had, Hanna and I talked about immigration, right? In these immigration camps is what they're calling them. And, this 4th of July, somebody posted and said, well, while we have kids, locked in cages, sleeping on floors and dying, we shouldn't even be celebrating our independence. And that sentiment actually, I agree with that. I actually had a hard time going. I had a friend who does a fireworks show every year right before 4th of July. And it's more of a family thing. We grill whatever we have. You bring fireworks if you want to. He always spends $400 or $500 on fireworks himself. And so you could go and just watch, or you can just not watch, or you can go and drink. You can go, like, he has a small pool. We can go swim. And essentially we just go hang out. And, his thing is he's not this big saying, hey, we want, this is America, I get to do what I want. It's, I enjoy fireworks. It's legal in Michigan, therefore I'm going to shoot them off. But it's more of a family thing. We get together and converse. Yeah. And I even had a hard time wanting to go to that just because I know there's people down in these camps and we have an administration and everybody, and this is why I can't stand when people, riff on Antifa to some extent, because for me, the big thing here, folks, is that, like, I'm sitting here going, we're all complacent to some extent, and we have to be to live and survive. We have kids that depend on us. If I didn't have kids, I probably would have quit my job and gone down to the border, and I would be try to be doing something, and I'd probably be in jail by this point because of my personality. But we all go to our jobs every day. We're all eating in our houses. We go out to eat. We still get to watch sports. I think the World Cup is on as we're recording this.
It's finished.
Oh, it finished? Okay. So
USA 2-0.
There you go. See, Jesus, we even won that. Damn it!
Yeah.
And I bet you Trump tomorrow will come on and say he made the World Cup great again. anyway, but the problem I have is that I feel complacent to some extent, and I know we're doing a show. We're calling this out. We're creating some sort of a media aspect to try and call this out, but sometimes I feel like there's more we should be doing to tear the fabric of this down. I don't know. How do you feel?
Yeah, that's why I've become a little more active in my activism, and a lot more vocal on social media and at work with my kids. I try and speak to my kids about it because I have 2 kids voting next time, and I want my kids to be informed voters. And then when you feel like you've done something, but it's really not going to make a difference, it really you take a little blow to like, well, what did I do today? Really, I didn't really help anyone. I didn't improve anyone's life, or I just kind of went through the motions. That can feel defeating.
Yeah, and that's the problem is where do we draw the line? I mean, and what would happen? And maybe this is a tangent, but what would happen if like we all stopped what we were doing and started boycotting things, and we all started migrating to the borders to fix this? Would that help? I think I hesitate with Trump to say that it would help, but
he just round us up and put us in the camps too.
Yeah, well, very true, and that's very true. But somebody wonders, what do we got to do to change this, because it's not working. I'm still as angry as I was a week and a half ago recording that episode. And I won't say that I'm pretty angry. I'm angry to the point where I actually the company I work for is doing fundraising for the American Heart Association. And you probably, if you follow me on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, you probably see me posted about a coworker of mine did something where he basically, you got to shave his head. People donated. They donated to American Heart Association, right? And I support that. Like, it runs in my family. I'll probably need help from that at some point in my career because of the fact that I have heart problems. But I went to our HR lady and asked, when do we get to change what charities we do to? Because there's people being put in camps at the border, and here we're donating to heart research. At some point, I think that can stop, and we should be focused directly on how we're going to get people out of camps. And I don't think that should be a controversial thing, no matter what political direction you swing. I really don't. I don't understand how people think this way.
Well, they've politicized it. That's how. Simply, they just made it a political thing. It's a divisive statement, or it's a divisive point. They seem to focus on immigration, and now they've labeled them as the new other. Because before, years ago, the others were some illegal immigrants, and then Middle Eastern people with the Muslim ban, the travel ban. So now the new other is no longer the Middle East; it's Mexico.
Yeah, ugh. I don't know. And it's just disgusting. I don't know, and I don't know. So if we go back all the way back to the actual parade, he gave a speech where he basically repeated himself for an hour, a little over an hour, I believe, about how he's helped America, how he's made America great, how he's done all these things, to say we are the best, we are everything. And what I like, to your point, there's images of, Russia where they have tanks rolling down the Red Square on what they call Victory Day parade with people saluting. And I think the big thing that you hit on earlier, Boyce, was that you just said, how many people have parades for them and how many times do you have parades for others? Right. And I think of, like in Zealand, we have a Memorial Day parade that my kid has to participate in for band. And I think of every one of the military veterans that walk in that, all are they're either carrying a sign or they have something on their car that says one of their comrades who fell in combat or after combat. And it's very touching because they're not saying, hey, look at me, I did this. They're saying, hey, look at the people that gave their life for you. And I think if we're going to do a parade, especially some sort of a military parade, because there's only 2 other countries in the whole world that are doing one as large as what we tried to do, and that's in China and France. And I think we need to sit down and say, why are we focused on us when we could be focused on others, where we could be giving back to others? And Trump just doesn't have that bone in his body. For him, it's the, look at me, look at what I've done. It's like he's a little parrot, look at me, that type of thing. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, and to me, it's, again, he almost idolizes dictatorships. And he even said himself, I get along better with dictators than the media, to demonize them again, of course. That's his call sign. But he really does worship, Kim Jong-un and, and the I think it's the prime minister of China, Xi. Yep. And then, of course, Putin's he's the one pulling the strings as far as I'm concerned when it comes to his, like him getting out of Syria is a bonus for Russia.
Yeah, exactly.
All those moves. And then he meets up with Putin over there at that G20 summit and jokingly says, hey, don't meddle in our elections again, wink, wink. And Putin just smiled and laughed. I was like, wow, what a mockery, man. What a mockery of us.
Yeah, exactly. And, and that's kind of the obviously the big one that everybody thinks of. And then this is why I wanted to talk about this, is because the media immediately goes to North Korea and Kim Jong-un, when they think of military parades, because his face is plastered over everything. Oh. Everybody lines up and salutes him. Everybody bows down. Everybody does these things for him.
Yeah.
And I won't say that Trump had anybody bowing down to him or doing any of those things. I watched enough of the video to know that did not happen. We didn't have a big picture of Trump on the background. But I will say that next year, if those things happen, and mark this podcast 182, mark it, because if these things are happening next year, we should be scared for the election. It should no longer matter. I don't care. I don't care if you're a libertarian, if you're that crazy lady that we'll talk about in a minute here from the Democratic debates. I don't care who you are. You're going to be better than Trump, no matter what way we look at it. I don't care if we put the country into financial ruin. Anybody that will get up and put a big picture of him up or have everybody salute him, that's when we should stop. He's done. He should be immediately done. No questions asked.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and that's why I think we're already scared for 2020 as it is. And that would just be a huge red flag of him wanting to further mimic dictatorships and violent, oppressive ones.
Exactly.
All of them. You start doing that when you're replacing yourself with the image, then you're making yourself bigger than the flag, quote unquote, image, which is debatable too. Because to some people that flag means oppression and hatred and murder and rape or caging your children, stuff like that. So he wants to replace everything and make it a demigod type of thing.
Exactly. And that's just, I don't know. To me, that's just disgusting and on par with how ignorant a lot of people, I think, are about what's going on. And if we're not continually looking at how we can change that, we could be that nation. And there could be no longer a Cellar Door Skeptics podcast or a Mindful Skeptics podcast. Look, I'm 2 for 4, baby.
That's right. I did like the Mindless Skeptic. That was a pretty good slip. I liked it.
Yeah, well, that's what happens at 12 in the morning with a little bit of whiskey.
Yes. For sure.
Anyway, so I think that's enough about Trump. We can't dedicate a whole episode to him. That's just wrong to me.
Yeah.
So, disgusting. Anyway, so really the big focus for tonight was to talk about the Democratic debates, right? Yes. And I'm sorry we didn't get to this earlier this week or last week, because this is huge. And I have 3 articles because there's just so much information to cover. But there's out of the 3 articles, one of the main ones that we will be talking about is going to be the first Democratic debate in 5 charts from 538. And the only reason I say this is because 538 is one of the leading, political analyst websites that you're going to get. And whether they're slanted or not it's kind of inconsequential, because I don't think they're slanted enough to change the momentum of their charts. They literally look at raw data. And
that's what I was looking at, that chart where it just shows trends. That's it.
Exactly.
Which I do like that.
Yeah, and they're not as politically motivated specifically as like other websites. Like we have a CNN article we'll talk about, I'm sure, and they're obviously motivated for a centrist Democrat. But this one here doesn't have as much affiliations outside of the fact that they are going to look at statistics over everything else.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I see one of their charts is all about gaining Twitter followers. Somehow that matters now.
So the reason they say that is because in the political universe, what's everybody gravitating towards is Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Because they aren't stopping the Nazis. They are letting free speech walk all over everything. And because they are unregulated, a lot of politicians are taking to it. And, look at the, Emperor Supreme Dickhead, he uses Twitter nonstop. I mean, you have a channel dedicated to making fun of him and his tweets. So, other people are doing the same thing because if that's becoming the new political outlet over Facebook, and I think it is for the pure fact that it's short, sweet, and it's easier to consume, people are able to get rid of the actual in-depth conversation and nuance that comes with a Facebook or a blog post, and in favor of 180 characters or whatever the new character limit is, 240. I don't know what the character limit is anymore, but
I think that's right.
But that's what people are in favor of. So if you can, and think about it, in our society, if we can consume microbytes and believe we know what's going on and feel educated, that's what happens. And that's where fake news comes from, is microbytes. And, it also allows for more people to be viewed in smaller amounts than before. And that's why they did that, is because, they want to show where people gained in terms of, popularity per se in the most media savvy, I guess, media savvy network that exists. And, the funny one is Castro, right? Castro was the biggest gainer for somebody that has no Twitter followers, followed by Yang. Both of those two, huge gains for them. Castro gained almost 25%, and Yang gained almost 25% as well.
Yep.
Those are huge numbers for those individuals to gain on that field.
Well, and if you look at the totals, before the debate, Bernie was a landslide, 9 million followers.
Yep.
And then you had Booker, number 2, with 4 million and some change. Biden's number 3 with 3 million. And then Kamala Harris was at 2.7 million, but she gained almost 60,000 Twitter followers. But I guess that what it comes down to is, I guess that's a way of measuring interest. If someone's looking for more information, I guess.
And that's right. You're right. That's it.
Yeah. But some of these people have, like, Bennett has 23,000 followers, and then Ryan has 22, Delaney. I mean, I'm not some huge Twitter guy either, but good gravy. I know it's nothing compared to the 9 million.
Yeah, we got like 1,000 or 600 or something like that.
Yeah, I don't even have 1,000. I'm not really as active on Twitter as I should be, but I'm trying to.
Yeah. I don't know. You're right, and that's that's the funny thing, that is a very good statistical graph that takes all the bias out of it. The graph that was on before that whole thing is who overperformed, what were the expectations of people, where were people at, and that was a big one right there. Is there's some expectations, and the one that surprised me the most was Warren. Harris. I'm not surprised at. And let's come back to Harris, because I think that's a good conversation. But I've been on the Warren campaign board, I've been running that train for over 3 years now, 4 years, something like that. I have really liked Warren for a lot of her stances. I cannot stand the American Indian crap she got into. And I do think that hurts her as an individual. And I don't disagree that should be looked at. And we should honestly be a little bit scared by some of the stuff that has come out with her on that. But at the exact same time, I was very surprised she did as well as she did in that debate specifically. And I was a little sad that, as people are breaking the 2 days up, right? Day 1 is less known people, right? And then day 2 is more well-known people. And I'm sitting here going, what the heck are you talking about? Warren has worked in the government for how many years now? She's actually got policies in place that she's helped write. She has a catalog of policies that she wants to institute when she becomes president. So, really, folks, I have a hard time seeing her as a lower-rated candidate, other than people don't like the fact that, she she came out and basically lied about her heritage and tried to claim a minority status that she doesn't have.
Right. Well, to be fair, my family had that same kind of delusion of Native American heritage, where my mom's side of the family said, yeah, your great grandma and great grandpa were born and raised and married on an Indian reservation in Oklahoma, is what I was told. But I went to DNA.com or Ancestry.com, did my DNA goose egg. I'm 100% immigrant, period. But they say that 50% of Americans claim it, and only about 10 to 15% actually are considered anything above 10%, which gives you tribal rights, I guess you'd say. But I do worry about her one-on-one with Trump. She's going to pull the same old stuff with the nicknames with Pocahontas, which that's really the only negative he can say. That, and he'll just call everything she says socialist, which is going to be his catchphrase now. That's socialism. He doesn't understand the nuance between democratic socialism and actual socialism.
Yep.
Russia is a socialist country. China, socialist country. Ran by what? Dictators. Not by democratic nominees. So that's only Warren is, again, she has substance. Her character is good. The only thing is she fell for that hook, line, and sinker with Trump saying, take the DNA test and I'll give you $1 million. And he reneged on that. He didn't give her $1 million. He just laughed at her. And so I hope she learned her lesson and doing that bait and switch kind of thing. But she definitely looked great. She looked like a giant among average people on the first night.
Exactly. And, I think she came in very strong, and I enjoyed her performance for political sustenance over everybody else. I won't lie and say she was my favorite out of everybody because I can't remember that dude's name, but whatever the dude is that told Biden he should pass the torch and then literally would not let it go throughout the second Democratic debate. Whoever that guy was, I love that guy. He was comedic gold.
That is Swalwell.
Swalwell?
Yep.
There you go. I have no idea where he stands on anything else, and every time I saw him speak, I didn't care less. I was literally waiting for him to attack Biden. Everything else, I don't care about. Harris had a really good comeback against Biden. We could talk about that in a minute because she's a troubling character in the Democratic Party, honestly. I'm a little bit more convinced by her, but she is a troubling character. But his whole attack on Biden, he has this whole dramatic story where he's like, I was at the Democratic convention at this age in my life, and somebody told a story about passing the torch to a younger generation, and that was you.
35 years ago, though.
35 years ago. And he's just sit here, and you're just like, dang, that was a good burn. That was pretty good, man. They had the long setup and then the short takedown. I laughed about that for days. I'm dead serious. I wanted to put it as a ringtone. Pass the torch.
Well, another thing he did, he had two good ones. One with Biden, and another one was Pete Buttigieg. He really slammed him pretty good. And I made a funny little quick video about that on my YouTube channel where Pete Buttigieg was being confronted about South Bend, about him failing in South Bend really as the mayor. And there's been another police shooting in South Bend of a minority by a white cop. And then before, there was a racial slur or racial remarks being made by white cops, and it was a black chief of police, and he fired him on the spot. Well, now this one's a white police chief, and there's been a murder, not words, but actual murder, and he didn't fire him, and Swalwell chimed in real quick, and Buttigieg was dancing around the topic. And he goes, well, if you're the mayor, you're on the board, you should be able to, why didn't you fire him? He goes, well, it's still under investigation in Indiana, blah, blah, blah. And then Swalwell butts in again. He goes, you have the authority to fire him. You fired the other one, you should fire this one. And Buttigieg took his little pretty mask off and gave him a death glare. I mean, for 5 seconds, he locked eyes with him, and there's no smile. And he gave him I made a comment on my video about him wishing he had his service revolver now because he's a veteran as well. He gave him a death stare. And that was a pretty darn good shot on his part, too. But he's got good zingers. He's not really a good politician. He's a good, what do you call him? You go to a comedy show? He's a heckler.
Yeah.
He's a heckler more than a politician.
Yep, and he's really good at coming up with things on the spot. Like,
yeah,
I mean, I think the Biden thing was a little bit more planned, and I do think that's still somewhat planned, right? Mm-hmm. And, you know, the difference is, though, he didn't know those things were going to come up specifically. He just kind of brought them out at the right moments, and that's really good. And you know, you just kind of look at that and go, he's like a more intelligent Trump to some extent. That's kind of what he reminded me of. You know, like, we could investigate his policies. I don't really genuinely care enough. If he becomes a bigger thing, I'll care. But he's not a big thing, and you know, I mean, we have enough. There's enough good contenders between Warren, Sanders, Booker, Gillibrand. I'll grant Buttigieg a little bit there. I don't actually care for him personally, but I will accept him on the scale of, if he is going to run against Trump, that's an easy vote for me.
I'd put him. He's top 10 after the debates.
Yeah. The problem I have with him is he's centrist, and I guess we could talk a little bit about our personal political beliefs. Everybody that listens to the show knows I'm pretty far left. And we actually did a show, and I can't remember the number now, but we did a show where we talked about the difference between socialism and democratic socialism. We actually went into that because we were accused multiple times by Republicans on our Facebook page, you know, coming after us saying, you know, hey, you guys are not doing, you guys are socialists, blah, blah, blah. Everything you believe is socialist. And it's like, well, do you like public roads? Yeah, well, you're a socialist too, asshole. You know, I mean, it's no offense, but it's different. There's a difference between democratic socialism. And I think there's enough good candidates that Buttigieg is just, for me, is kind of a turnoff. Like, I like that he's a minority in the fact that he's gay. That's kind of cool. I would rather see a woman president, you know, rather than seeing a gay guy president. No offense. It's not that. It's just that women, again, it's that guy thing. Like, how many guys are we going to put up there? You know, having had that conversation with my daughter about, you know, women not being able to somehow make it to the top seat in politics is awful. You know, it's just, I don't want Hillary to run, but, you know, it's kind of like, why can we not see, why are we not pushing stronger women frontrunners, you know, to the stage? And Buttigieg is just very centrist in a lot of his beliefs. Like you said, you know, I mean, he's not technically going after poverty and racism in his community. He claims he is, and maybe he is a little bit, but if we have to put it on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to rate him a 3. That's where he's at. He's just, he's not coming to the table, you know, to take care of that.
Well, I went to a protest for women's rights to choose, you know, an anti-abortion protest by the NIA, the Northern Indiana Atheists, hosted it down in Goshen, Indiana. And I went down there, and they had a lady who was representing South Bend, because they have one abortion clinic in the whole city of South Bend, and they were trying to shut it down. And so she came down there and spoke, and I asked her afterwards about, because she lives in South Bend, how does she feel about Pete Buttigieg? And she says he's been very supportive of her cause, because that fits his demographic, I guess you'd say, you know, the LGBTQ community and the pro-choice. But she did say some positive things about him working to get the first casino in Indiana's in South Bend with the Four Winds. It's created jobs and a tax base, but the race relations has not improved. The violence has actually gotten worse in this city with murders, gun violence, and then, you know, cop problems with the police.
Yeah. And that's just, you know, and that's, I think that's big actually in this. I think that's big personally, in my opinion here. And I think that is huge to the aspect of, if we don't start addressing some of these things, you want to get rid of Antifa. Let's address these disproportionate issues here. And, you know, it doesn't matter what I say. I'm going to probably piss somebody off, but I'm hoping that we can start going after those that are taking minorities and pushing them down and saying, nope, we're no longer going to accept this. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And I think Pete Buttigieg just doesn't do anything in that realm. And I think he's a good centrist. And I think if centrist is your thing, he's your man.
Yeah, he's your guy.
And
he checks the box for identity politics too.
Yes.
Which I don't like that per se as a topic, but it is a topic.
Yep. But if we want to also talk a little bit about Kamala Harris, right? So she was, for me, she was a surprise come through, right? Like I didn't know a lot about her. You know, a lot of people had kind of dissuaded me from even looking into her. And so I kind of just, wrote her off. But her ability to come in and basically she looked at everybody and said, hey, stop fighting, for Christ's sake. Let's actually discuss issues here. For her to be able to come and say that's pretty good. I think that's very on point. I think a lot of her points, she went after Biden on the race thing. And this is where, in my opinion, this is where Biden failed, because she calls him out and he doubles down. She calls him out again and he triples down. And he just said, hey, hold on a second, Biden, why don't you just say, hey, you know what? Maybe back in the day, I thought that was a good thing. I don't agree with it now. I've changed my viewpoint. Literally, he could have just ended that whole conversation right there. And then I don't think she should have to stop the conversation. She can go on berate him for as long as she wants. I think that's perfectly. He made some very shitty policies and did not support minorities a lot. But the problem is that he doubled down on his decisions, and it's like, dude, are you running for president, or are you running on Trump's platform here? Because it almost feels like it. I mean, even Hillary didn't do that. Even Hillary apologized. Bernie has apologized. There's people that have gone out of their way and apologize, and not hear Biden apologize. Not only does that take him out of, in my opinion, out of a contender, I think people should be worried and start distancing themselves from him quickly. Yeah.
Well, and don't forget, Elizabeth Warren has adamantly apologized for her not supporting Bernie in 2016. She said that's one of her biggest regrets in her political career is going with the DNC's decision to backdoor Bernie and put Hillary in, which I admire that about her.
Yeah. Yep. And you're right. And so, and she's also come out and apologized about her American Indian comments and her, claim the heritage. I mean, I don't think her apologies are very good personally, but she has come back and apologized, for that. But, going back to Kamala Harris, here, if we bring it all the way back, we look at it, and I like her attack on Biden, and I like, the fact that she was very forthright and very pushy about saying, hey, you're one of the top runners because of your name, but yet you don't support minority rights. And here, you just proved again you didn't do it. I like that about her. What's troubling is when I started to do some research about her, what she actually says and does to minorities in California as a prosecutor is a little concerning. And I understand you get paid to do a job. I get it. But some of the things that she's done and she's fought against, basically releasing people that she put into prison, releasing them, she's fought against it, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. She has fought against that. Hands down. So she's taken some very conservative positions, man, that I don't know, man. I've had a hard time lately wanting to support her. I really want to, but...
Well, that's something I've done a lot on my YouTube channel. Earlier, it was when people would announce who was running, I'd immediately dive into their voting record and what their positions are, and then what they're doing now. And what was disturbing about her, and I did when my research was, again, she's a prosecuting attorney for the state of California, and she put more minorities in jail for minor possessions, and she exploited Bill Clinton's policy of the three strikes rule as a felony. And she's put people away for life for possession of marijuana. Life.
Yeah, exactly.
She could have asked for a lower sentence since it was just a petty possession, but she went for the throat. And I don't like that. I don't think she's good for criminal justice reform. She's an attorney and she's a centrist, so she's a good debater.
I agree.
She's a powerful speaker, and she'll talk right over you. She'll talk right over you, which just like Trump does. That's her style, which makes her a formidable opponent. And these 10 people on stage, she'll talk over 9 people to get her point across. That makes her stick out.
I agree. And again, looking at it, if I have to pick a centrist, I've started to back away from her a little bit in the aspect of, well, you don't have a very good record, and what are you doing to change that? What I mean, you can make the excuse, it's my job, I'm doing the job to my best of my ability, right? You could say that, but what are you going to do about it now? Are you going to go back and admit you made mistakes and this is no longer your job? Therefore, as president, you're going to overturn these and release people back out of prison? What are you going to do? And I think that I just don't know who's going to challenge her on that issue right now. And I'm kind of hoping, weirdly enough, I was kind of hoping Bernie would have, right?
Bernie knows what to do with that type of candidate, I think.
And I really hope, again, I still am not 100% sold on Bernie getting, the nomination, personally. But I am very for him taking and going after her on her record and seeing how she reacts. Because if she goes, even if it's some snaky shit, but she basically commits publicly to fixing some of the wrongs she's done, I will take back my sentiment against her and say she's more of somebody I can work towards. Because right now, when it comes to it, I'm more on board with Cory Booker than I am with her, only for the pure fact that, if I have to pick a centrist, I'd rather have Cory over her because Cory doesn't have the criminal justice slander record she has. And especially in California. And that 3 strikes rule is an awful rule for as liberal of a state as that state is.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Cory Booker, he seems to be compassionate, much more attacking policies from a place of love and humanism. He's much more humanistic, and I like that about him. He seems more compassionate, and I think he's done a good job representing New Jersey. The problem is I don't think he's done a good job representing us as a nation by getting in bed a little bit with Big Pharma in his history. Yep. He's not taking corporate PAC money now, but he has. Just like I don't like Kamala Harris running on tough on crime in California to get elected to her position now.
Yeah.
So there's no such thing as a perfect candidate. We got to remember that too.
No, you're right. We do. I think the difference is, and like I said, when we look at it, Pete Buttigieg is not taking care of crime. He's helping push the white agenda a little bit more. Kamala Harris is weirdly enough pushing a white agenda as a minority, which is kind of concerning. I do agree Cory Booker is a concern when it comes to, the pharmaceuticals and medical insurance. And I do agree with that. But if I had to pick out of those 3, the less of the evils, Cory Booker gets my vote out of all those 3 because of the fact that, racial minority tensions and putting people in prison and murdering, minorities is at an all-time high, in my opinion, in this country. And maybe it's because we have more media now, but it feels we're at an all-time high. And it's disgusting to me, going out there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, plus, like I said, I like Cory Booker more than those 3 just because of his humanism. Yeah. That's it. That's all it is to me. I like that. That's a good quality. We need that because we are clearly lacking that in our administration now.
Yeah. So another one of the charts that 538 had was who spoke the most. And I'll be honest, we don't have to spend very much time on it. I find it pointless to some extent. I mean, all it does this show is a domination aspect. Biden showed up at the top, then Cory, then Camilla, then, Pete, then Beto O'Rourke, which is weird because I don't understand how Beto O'Rourke's even in this anymore. And I don't understand how anybody can support that guy at all. I don't know. Do you think it matters really how many words are spoken? I mean,
well, words spoken means questions asked, and it matters. As a Yang supporter, this is abysmal because they asked him 2 questions in 2 hours, and he tried to chime in. Now, this is a conspiracy. I don't know, but he tried to chime in a couple times. He kept tapping his microphone and pointing at it, saying, "Why is my microphone not on?" He kept tapping it and pointing at it, and that was in the 2nd hour. Yep. So he got 594 words, which doesn't mean shit to me. He just answered 2 questions as best he could in 45 seconds. And like I was saying earlier, Cory Booker wasn't asked the most questions. Neither was Kamala Harris, but they were the most vocally willing to step over people to answer the questions, despite the moderators trying to say, "We'll come back to you. We'll get back to you." and they overstep their boundary a little bit. That's just with aggression.
Yeah, exactly. And that's again, looking at it, that's weird because I was waiting for you to bring up the Andrew Yang thing, because I do agree. Why are we, okay, somebody like, and maybe this is just me, me being a little anti-Williamson. I'm sorry, but she has no good points in my opinion. There's nothing.
You're pro logic.
Like it's especially, nobody should be surprised on this podcast, but she had almost nothing of value to say. And when she did try to make a point, it was so lofty and just like airy. I didn't understand how she even got on the debate. To begin with, like how did she poll high enough to get on the debates? I have no idea. Of all people, Oprah. Is that what it was? Okay.
She's Oprah's like spiritual something or other, and she's an author. Okay. She's an author of these feel good books about spirituality or whatever. Like when they asked her, if you're your first day in president, what would you do? She's like, I'm gonna call the Prime Minister of New Zealand and talk about how she thinks is the best place to raise a baby. And I say, girlfriend. I'm like, oh shit. Yeah. What the hell is going on? That's what you got to say? No policies? I mean, some people never talk about policy. Like Tim Ryan didn't, Delaney didn't, Williamson didn't, Hickenlooper tried to, de Blasio and Inslee. I just like, what are these? What's the point? If you don't talk about a policy, let's just move on. Yeah. And some don't. And, Bernie, Elizabeth Warren, Biden, no. He didn't talk about policy. He said Trump like 40-something times.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that crazy? And I think he's, again, in this, it's sad. It's like his campaign people are taking a page out of Trump's book to some extent. Like they're like, hey, this is how Trump got elected. Let's do this. And maybe it's the DNC behind it. And maybe this is a little conspiratorial. And if Hanna were here, Hanna would immediately tell me to back off on that, because Hanna's going to be a little bit more cautious than I am, in that aspect. But to some extent, right, folks? I mean, to me, that's the big thing here is that, are we going to see a Biden-Trump president run? And if we do, what happens, right? And for me, and again, I do not care specifically that much for Yang as an individual. But I do think it's a crime that we allowed all these other people to talk over him, and we didn't give him questions. And I don't know. I think, again, I guess if we look at it in a holistic view, right? And people are like, okay, hold on. He was asked one question, and he basically had to backtrack and say, well, what is that about? And it's like, well, your whole policy is about giving everybody $1,000, and you had to ask us why? Like, you look dumb saying that. I'm sorry. Like, you didn't know your own policy. And so maybe that's why, I'll grant, maybe that's why he got less questions, because people were like, okay, you don't even know your own policy. We're done with you. But they didn't do that to somebody like a Biden, because he has a popular, support. And I don't know.
The one time he's asked a question, he said he couldn't hear him. That's why he said, what was that? Like, he didn't know he couldn't hear him per se. But as far as Biden goes, I mean, even his own, like, to be non-conspiratorial, his own staff has voiced their frustrations that he didn't stick to their talking points. He went off script and did his own thing. They're like, Jesus, this guy's an idiot. He keeps mentioning Trump, Trump, Trump. And that's not what he was supposed to do from his team's aspect of his prep work. He just kind of ignored the prep work, and he just went off and talked about Trump and Obama. He mentioned Obama 100-something times. So out of 2,475 words, Obama and Trump is about 300 of those. I mean, it's pathetic. There's no substance. If Biden wins the election, Trump's president.
I don't disagree. I mean, it'd be like a John Kerry scenario all over again. And I'll be honest, you want to know here you go. I've had to admit this on more damn podcasts than I care to. But that was the first year I got to vote in an election. Mm-hmm. And I refused to vote for Kerry, specifically because of his, wishy-washy viewpoints. And I literally voted Green Party. That's the only presidential election I've ever actually voted Green Party specifically in, was that election. And that was my youth ideology. And here's a funny thing. My ex-wife, when we were dating at the time, and her mother actually supported Kerry and was on the Kerry thing. And when I questioned her on it, she's like, do you really care? Do you want Bush for another 4 years? And I said, I got to stand on my principles, blah, 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 blah. And then we had Bush for another 4 years, and it was awful. And I hated it every single step of the way. And we went further into war. Mm-hmm. And I somewhat regret that now, going back saying, well, I stood on my 100% of my principles for the nation when the nation, maybe I'm farther left than the rest of the nation. And back then I was a little bit more woo-wee left than, is socialistically left. But, I have to go back to that moment in time and say, hey, I stood on a principle that I felt was positive, but in the long run was harmful for the country to some extent.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I did the same thing in 2016. I didn't vote for Hillary or Trump. I went third party. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, and now look, thanks, Boyce. You're the specific reason. The name of the episode is Boyce voted third party, therefore we have Trump. Boom.
Boyce, therefore Trump.
Boyce, therefore Trump. Damn.
Yep.
But again, we all make mistakes, and we all don't quite understand, some of the repercussions. And it's kind of funny because, now I'm not as surprised, but I had a friend back in the day that was very a conservative atheist, and he had so many issues with Trump. And then when it came down to the elections, it was between Hillary and Trump. He turned to Trump. And I said, well, you have third-party options. Like, I don't agree with you, but at least then go out and vote third party. At least you can say, I didn't vote for Trump. Even if by some nature you not voting for Hillary was a vote for Trump. At least you have a little bit more integrity, in that. And he, he doubled down on the whole Trump thing. And now he's not an atheist anymore, but he's a Catholic again. Staunch Catholic, at that. But, the thing goes back, well, maybe in true reality you always were a Trump supporter. You liked his outside candidate nature, and then you chose that over, over other candidates. And I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. So before we finish this segment out, there was a political article that said who's in and who's out for the next Democratic debates. So Boyce, do you know anything about how they choose who gets into the debates and who doesn't?
Yes. Yeah, it's 130,000 individual donors. You have to poll in 3 national polls in the top 10, I think it is. Or you have to get, I think it's over 3%, I'm sorry, in more than 4 national polls. And you have to have so many donors per state, something like that. But I know the big one is 130,000 individual donors, and then the poll is like 4 polls over 3% or something like that.
Okay. So who do you feel are going to be in the next set of debates? Because I think the next set of debates are in Michigan, in Detroit, right?
Well, the next one's on July 30th and 31st in Detroit, but that's already, the same 20 are going to be there as well.
Okay, so that's not changing.
Yeah, they qualified for the first 2. That's the first 2 qualified. And then in September, October is going to be the next 2 debates. You got to have the 130,000 individual donors, and you got to poll higher than 3% in 4 polls.
I see. So like Castro, like this article from Political, Castro's at 116,000 donors. And so he's just shy of it. So he has a probability of hitting that as an individual for the next debate cycle, is what we'll call it.
Yep.
So I don't know. That's interesting. So I do think it might be interesting for you and I to go down there, right, to some extent, because we go down there, everybody we already saw on stage is going to be there. We may be able to get an interview with Williamson, and you just be like, "Hey, can we just ask you a couple of questions about your spirituality? Like, can we ask you non-political questions because we don't understand how you're even here? Like, how did you get here? Who believes what you believe, man?
So I think right now, I can't remember where I read it at, but I'll have to look for that source. But somewhere it showed that like Bernie and Elizabeth already had that. Yang's already qualified for that second one. But Gillibrand is polling better, but not getting more support financially. And Biden, I think he's slipping in the polls. He might not. He'll qualify just off of name recognition, but a lot of people haven't even met that mark yet, but it's only like 3 or 4 is actually qualified for the next round. And Yang's going to be there no matter how many questions they ask him. He's going to be there because he has the support financially and numerically so far.
Yeah. And I think, what would be interesting, man? What I think is interesting about this is I think he would be very excited, to be there. And maybe that's why he's more quiet, right? Because he's like, look, I've already hit my marks. I hit what I need to get into the next round of debates. Does it really matter what I say now? Because when they shore up the candidates and we reduce them from this outrageous stage to half each, over half each stage, will I get more time? And will people take me more seriously? And I think the problem, again, my biggest thing with Yang is he borderlines policies that are libertarian, except for the one policy where he wants to give everybody $1,000. Like, that's like the only policy, like, I was like, oh, I agree with that 100%. I don't know where you got $1,000 from. I don't know if that's a good number or not, but I can at least agree with, basically giving a base income, because I think that's huge, personally.
Yeah. Yep. I've done the numbers. It's a significant. He's going to pay for it with a VAT tax, value added tax. He's pretty much going to tax Walmart and the top 1% Amazon people. But he's also supports Medicare for all, which is another progressive stance, I guess you'd say. Yeah, those are his 2 big ones. The other one's just humanism first. So he knows he has like over 100 policy ideas, but he knows there's only going to be 1 or 2 that he can actually get through as a president in a 4-year term. And that's why he's anchored to Medicare for all and UBI. And that's the thing. I don't know enough. Like, I've done research on others, and Warren has a lot of policies of, like you're saying, she has dozens of policies that she likes. Bernie has probably 100 himself because he's had such a long political career. Yeah. And I think Cory Booker has maybe a dozen or so on his website. But you got to contribute to look at it, so I don't do it on a direct website. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. I'm not going to contribute at this point to any political campaign. Here we go. I'll call Hanna out a little bit. He's already donated to the Bernie Sanders, campaign, and that's, Hanna is getting Hanna to move away from Bernie is going to be a very difficult thing. And him and I actually disagree with this. I'm a little bit more against Bernie than I was before, only because Bernie doesn't show tolerance as much towards race issues, and he has to be called out for him to accept it. He also has said some borderline sexist things, and I guess maybe that's a dumb ideology to say borderline, but I mean, he said some things that you just kind of look at him and go, dude, man, that's kind of sexist, that with the way you said that, and like, maybe you don't mean it that way, and maybe just you aren't a good orator. And I do agree. I think Bernie struggles with, orating his conversations. Like, I like policies. I don't like that he's old as shit. I hate that. That bothers me. That's why I'm more Warren than him, because policy-wise, they're very identical. Yeah. Getting things done, they're pretty close. I'm a little more concerned because Elizabeth Warren runs the border of being a centrist in some of her policy votes inside of the her arena, right? She is definitely not gone out of her way to be extremely progressive until more later. Whereas Bernie's always been progressive. Like, Bernie was a progressive libertarian to some extent for a lot of his earlier career, and then he kind of went to more of that democratic socialist progressive stance, and he went away from the libertarian side. And personally, politically, he fits my political ideology almost perfect, except for he's not strong enough on minority and criminal justice tactics out there. But I think that there's a larger good that he can create inside of the society, because he can help put more money in people's pockets and help people that are struggling a lot more than other people can. And that's the other reason where Yang can come into this, because he's going to support universal basic income to some extent. And as long as he works towards not screwing people over in the tax brackets because of this, he's that's a pretty big thing. Even if he's libertarian on a lot of his other stances, that's a pretty big thing, because if you can help people get off that base level of Maslow's, pyramid, right? When we talk about these things, if you get people off that base level so people can survive, they become more active and they want to do other things. And even if Andrew Yang's a 4-term president, right? Is that a good thing that we can have to get minorities and other people out of the slums that they're living in and out of making minimum wage at 2 jobs just to survive, so that it allows them to feel more comfortable and be more active politically to change the climate? I don't know. Yeah. That could be a big thing.
I think economically, like I said, the first thing he's going to do is he wants to go attack the UBI thing, and he's going to flip Trump's. The big thing is Trump gave $1.3 trillion tax cut, 80-something% went to the top 1%. Pretty simple. So he's just saying flip it. Put that money back down and grassroots it. Every single person gets $1,000. That way no one can say it's a class thing, like you're only helping out the poor, you're forgetting about the middle class. And what happens in the middle class is, like, I make X amount of dollars a year, but I don't pay over $12,000 a year in income tax. So it's actually a wash for me, where I think I paid like $9,600 in taxes last year, my income tax for federal. And I'd probably make a couple grand that year because I'm paying in and I'm getting $3,000 more than I paid in. And now the more poor you are, the better it is for you. And it kind of evens the scale at the middle class level. But at the upper level, they're paying way over $1,000 a month in taxes. So, and the value added tax will get money out of Amazon's pockets and Walmart and all those folks. And the big thing is, whoever the politicians are, if they want to finance anything, they got to get rid of these loopholes for offshore account stuff. And
yep,
that's a big one. That's another thing I like about Yang and Bernie and Elizabeth Warren. Who else was the other one that said that? Kirsten Gillibrand's another one that said, we got to close these loopholes, which is easier said than done, because the rich people can afford the best accounting firms to find another loophole, and they get more tax breaks.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And if we don't do something about that, we're never going to, we're never going to get past where we're at. And
yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of disgusting, but at the same time, I don't know which one's going to fix America the most. So I'm going to hold my opinions to some extent and say, let's let the next debates play out, and let's let the September debates play out, and we could probably get a little bit more substance out of these candidates than we have right now.
Well, and that's why I like long-form debates. Like, any politician goes on the Breakfast Club or Joe Rogan, they have an hour or two to talk about their policies in a broad stroke, not 45-second sound bites. It's just not productive. And most of these candidates are spending most of their time attacking people than actually talking about their policies, which is not productive.
Exactly. Well, as we close the show out, I think we've had enough discussion about the debates for tonight. As we close the show out, though, boys, we do something special, right? We do, and this is going to definitely be in memory of Hanna, and I don't want to end this segment at all. He came up with this idea to do a quick save, right? Basically, what came across your feed, what did you know about, or what article did you read? It doesn't have anything to do with the show, but what did you come across that you thought was so interesting that you can sum up in 1 to 2 minutes for the viewing audience? So, what was your quick save this week, and did you have a quick save, and what is it for the week?
Yes, in homage to Christopher Hanna, I did a science-based article about gene editing using the CRISPR-9 technique, which I know he spoke of before in the past about on his quick saves. But
we have tons of them. Him and CRISPR might as well be like, they might as well fund each other.
Yeah, I loved it. But China has now confirmed their third gene-edited baby using the CRISPR-9 technique in an attempt to mutate the gene to be resistant to HIV. So this just shows you that these monarchies, the governments like China and Russia, are going to be at the forefront of these things while putting babies in danger when it comes right down to it. And so I think that's important for us to think about as a society, as a world society, not just USA, but to have more agreements that we shouldn't be doing these things to humans right now before we know what the long-term ramifications are of gene editing. Because it also shows that this article I sent to you for the show notes, it shows that there's a DNA marker that shows that if you manipulate this gene for HIV, it also has been shown to decrease your likelihood of living past 70-something years old. Mm-hmm. It increases your risk of heart disease or somehow in your bloodstream, because it's a bloodborne disease with HIV, or not bloodborne, but bodily fluid. So people want to read more about what they've done with CRISPR-9 and how it works and how controversial this is, that they were at a summit talking about the ethics of gene editing in humans, and China came out and says, no, we already done it. That way they jumped the gun. Yeah, they jumped the gun and says, we're going to do it before they can say we shouldn't do it. Before the ethics committee tries to poo-poo it, we're going to go ahead and do it, which they did with twins and then another child now. So I thought it'd be an interesting article if anybody's interested in the science and a homage to Hanna.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I think that's a very big debate. I mean, right now, one of the larger debates inside of our country here is, about women's rights and fetus rights, right? And we talk about that all the time. But here's China over here saying, well, we don't give a shit about any of that. We're going to basically say, we're going to edit genes and see how it goes. And we're going to roll that dice. And it's like, oh, hold on a second, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. And I found the original Nature research article from, and I don't know if you're better at correcting names than I am, but Rasmus and Zing Zhu. I don't know if that's a proper name, but those two are the authors of this. And essentially, yeah, you're right. They talk about how basically the predicted deviation for the rates of people that they start dropping before the 84th percentile around 68 years old. They also talk about observed deviation, which is under the 80th percentile, which is lower at that same age. So between the observed and the predicted, these people are not going to live to hit 70. Now, I don't know whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, right? Is that a trade-off? You never have to worry about HIV?
Yeah, for 70 years.
For 70 years? I don't know. I think there's a lot more things like heart disease we should be looking at, or Alzheimer's. Can you modify Alzheimer's or heart disease first? Because to me, that almost seems like the bigger thing nowadays than HIV. And maybe that's because we're privileged and we live in a first world country that deal with HIV in the same way. But I don't know. I think it's interesting, and I think it's worth a discussion. I don't know. So if you like it, I posted the link to the National Geographic article talking about it, as well as the Nature Science article inside of the description too. Yeah. So for my quick save this week is a CNN article. And see, I told you we come back to CNN, but it's a CNN article that talks about 55 years ago, on July 2nd, segregation finally became outlawed. Now, I'm not going to say that means segregation stopped, but I will say that at least we started to make an attempt to move towards being a little bit more fair to minorities in the United States. And the reason I found this of interest is because of the fact that I'm reading this documentary book about Lyndon B. Johnson. And that's why. That's part of the reason why, this article came across my feed. I happen to be listening to that book. I'm not anywhere near this portion in the book, but I think it's a good jumping off point to say, hey, America makes some okay decisions once in a while, even if it's not progressive enough for the likes of me or other people.
Yeah. Well, and didn't wait? That's right. Lyndon Johnson. Did he successfully run for a term after Kennedy?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, and that's during the Jim Crow laws, and all that stuff was being mashed out of our legal system. Like you said, it's not like anybody would notice. Still systematically segregating people with classism instead of racism.
Exactly.
That time, yeah.
Yep. Well, I thought it was an interesting article, and I think it's a worthy point to talk about, especially for our show. But as we wrap the episode up, I want to thank Boyce for joining as a guest host. He'll be back in a couple of weeks at minimum. We'll have more politics. The nice thing is Boyce lives right here in Michigan too, so we have the same schedule for the most part with our jobs and the same ability to record. So. Boyce, real quick again, tell everybody where they can find it, and also tell them what you're going to do with the video for the show.
Okay, so I also do video on my YouTube channel. It's just, you just look up Mindful Skeptics Podcast. It pops up. I made sure I researched that name so no one else could really jump ahead of me on the search engine. So any platform, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I have an IGTV channel where I make fun of Trump called Stupid Trump Tweets. And I put all that on my YouTube channel as well. And so this video will be up on YouTube if you want to see our beautiful faces. And I must say, Chris, you got a wicked beard going still, man. It's continuing its growth phase. So the first time I recorded you guys, you just had like a skinny goatee thing going and a little beard going. Yep. Now you let that thing fully grow.
Yep, I grew underneath it. I went all out. Did everything for it. So
they can see your wicked beard.
Yep.
And my atheist hat.
And the atheist hat. And that's the exciting part is, being able to partner with Boyce. He's a little bit more video savvy and has a little bit more time to deal with video than we have on the show. Anybody that's listened knew that, Cellar Door Skeptics originally, came out of atheist analysis, and we were a big video YouTube, group that we no longer are. And the idea that this video will be able to be somewhere and somebody's going to make it look pretty and not make me look stupid and add fancy graphics and things into it is exciting. So once he gets that up, I'll post the link in the show notes for the episode, and then we'll also have the links if you're watching this video and you want to just listen to it, or you want to go support the show any which way. You're welcome to come over here. And I think as we go forward in the future, we might have some good partnerships. So, again, thank you so much, Boyce, for joining us today. And we'll see everybody next week with another amazing Cellar Door Skeptics.
Good times, brother.
Yep, thank you. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll see you next week with another Cellar Door Skeptic.
You've been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker. CellarDoorSkeptics.com.
If you'd like to join the ranks of Patreons and sponsor the show, head over to patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics. For less than a 20-ounce soda or an energy drink each week, you can help sponsor us, the hosts, and our charity of choice. Patreon helps Cellar Door Skeptics create better content, become better activists, and it's going to help you stay healthier by drinking one less soda or one less energy drink each week. Click the link in the notes of the show to sponsor us today, because we bring the discussion with the sources.